Hello and welcome to Reporters, the very best of France 24 reporting from around the world. In this edition, we head to Corsica, which last year cemented its reputation as France's rebel island by voting for the nationalists in regional elections. Distrust of Paris has long been a feature of life in one of the poorest parts of France. In the past, some separatists have resorted to violence in their campaign for independence. But this is the first time voters have outright rejected the traditional parties. Corsica already has its own executive and assembly within the French Republic. So what more does this new generation of political leaders want? Our reporters Pauline Goddard and Jonathan Walsh went to find out.
Corsica's new strongman is keeping an eye on his turf. Gilles Simeoni used to be the mayor of Bastia. Since then, he's led the nationalists to power and taken control of the local executive council. A recent poll showed he was the most popular politician on the island.
We were sick of all the systems we had until now. I think he managed to unite a lot of people. Some were already on his side, some weren't. He's simply the right man in the right place.
Whether left or right-wing, traditional parties are facing growing criticism. They're often accused of incompetence. But the protest vote alone doesn't explain such a historic victory.
I knew his father when he was young. After the events in Aleria, I supported him, and I've supported the Simeoni family ever since. Now it's the son.
Every single Corsican knows his last name. His father, Edmond, is a key figure in the nationalist cause. In 1975, his movement occupied a winery in Aleria. He felt Corsicans were discriminated against when it came to land distribution. When the police moved in, 2 of them were shot. A year later, the National Front for the Liberation of Corsica came into being. It was the beginning of 4 decades of armed struggle. But Edmond Simeoni would later choose dialogue, a legacy now claimed by his son, a former lawyer.
In 1975, my father and my uncle went to prison. The underground movement didn't come out of nowhere in Corsica. It was born of injustice. It was considered legitimate for generations of activists. I can understand this point of view. However, when I became a politician in 2006, 2007, I was convinced the violence had to stop.
Mission accomplished. In 2014, the FLNC finally laid down its weapons. And last December, the nationalists won local elections and took over the region. 2 movements share power. The autonomists, led by Gilles Simeoni, who hold a vast majority. And the separatists, a more radical group, headed by Jean-Guy Talamoni, the new Speaker of the Assembly.
I'm an activist from a political group that has always showed solidarity with the underground movement. Without that struggle, there wouldn't be a Corsican people. The Corsican language wouldn't exist anymore. People have to remember it was bound to disappear quickly, and our coastline would have been covered in concrete. That's where we were headed, with those crazy policies that were imposed on us.
Talamoni's tendency to speak of France as a separate country infuriated the government, as did his inaugural speech in Corsican.
Di tutti gli eletti di questa assemblea, mi tocca dire 2 parole a nome di miei che non ha mai accettato di riconoscere l'autorità francese.
Local politicians have long used the region's language and even voted to give it special status several years ago.
This assembly decided that Corsican should become an official language alongside French, and that decision was made by the previous assembly, which was not a nationalist one. We think Paris should stop this miscarriage of democracy and reality.
The previous assembly voted through other measures, though they were deemed unconstitutional, such as the amnesty for prisoners, or the creation of a residence permit for people from mainland France. They're long-standing nationalist demands, but they want to go further still.
Corsica is obviously a country, inhabited by a specific people. The island is geographically separate, and its people are destined to create their own project of society and then implement it. Independence is not the objective in the years to come. We're fighting for new institutions that would allow larger autonomy.
It's an ambitious project for one of France's poorest regions and its 320,000 inhabitants. Almost a third of the workforce is employed in the public sector.
We don't intend to remain dependent or beg for money. We have a country that is potentially rich, and we want to develop it.
Much of those riches come from tourism. It represents 31% of the region's GDP, a record in France. The sumptuous landscape and the Mediterranean climate have led to its success. Jean-Pierre Pinelli is the owner of one of Calvi's best hotels. With the business closed from October to April, he takes advantage of the winter downtime to refurbish.
Si vous voulez, la fin de la saison, c'est une fracture.
The end of the season is a social fracture.
Le chômage, et c'est surtout aussi
Unemployment goes
un
up,
pan de l'économie
a whole section of the economy slums,
sommeil, puisque le tourisme touche.
because tourism is related to many different activities, such as retail or transport, that declines by 50 or 60%.
60% de l'activité du transport.
In Corsica, summer houses make up a third of the property market. As a result, the price of land and real estate has spiraled. To fight against speculation, the nationalists want to create a special residency status. People would have to live on the island for at least 5 years before being allowed to buy property.
On renverrait pas forcément une très bonne image.
This wouldn't give a good image of Corsica.
Je veux dire, quelqu'un qui
Why would
vient
you want residency status?
habiter cette île,
Why couldn't someone simply decide to come and live on the
on ne
island?
peut pas le faire en toute simplicité. On ne fait pas d'omelette sans casser les œufs.
You can't make an omelette without
Forcément,
breaking a
si on veut
few
faire du
eggs.
tourisme, il faut quand même
If you want to develop
sacrifier
tourism, you need to
certain
sacrifice a few square
kilomètres
kilometres.
carrés pour qu'on puisse faire du développement.
For some Corsicans, that's a sacrifice too far.
Oh, les pitchounes. Ah, les pitchounes, regardez. Ceux-là, ils ont une semaine, les veaux. Ils sont beaux, hein?
Jacques ABBATUCCI is a livestock breeder in the island's southwest.
If I'd sold my land, I would have a nice collection of cars, a house by the sea with a swimming pool. But this is the family's legacy. It's not just about being Corsican. You need to fight against real estate speculators. Introducing a special residency status is something that could help. At some point, you need to accept that the land belongs to the people who live on it, who farm on it.
Hundreds of hectares by the Mediterranean Sea. A mouth-watering prospect for buyers. Jacques ABBATUCCI made a name for himself by breeding the typically Corsican tiger cow.
The idea is to have cows that originally came from Corsica, that have adapted to their environments and eat only what they find. The objective is to achieve food self-sufficiency. We're on an island. We used to function by ourselves, without any outside help. So if we're clever, we can handle things by ourselves.
Fully local and organic production, self-sufficiency, recipes Jacques convinced could be applied to the whole region. His brother, who works nearby as a wine grower, shares his reasoning.
We need to have identified local products with high added value. And you can see that Jacques and I are good examples. I grow 18 varieties of old Corsican grapes.
Jean-Charles ABBATUCCI has just become a member of the prestigious Academy of French Wines, a first for a Corsican. He also exports half of what he produces, a rare achievement here. According to him, agriculture should be considered a springboard for the economy.
Corsica could be a major supplier for high-end European produce. On the global market, we're nothing. But it could be a major source of revenue without any problem. In my opinion, agriculture should be considered an industry for the future, a way to get people working all year long.
Far from the Mediterranean shore, Corte is surrounded by mountains. A nationalist stronghold, it houses the only university on the island. 4,500 students, many of whom support the new Corsican leaders' line. This class is taking a course in Corsican language and culture.
Choosing this path is a militant gesture, and it's the historical curriculum at Corte University. It's a natural choice, one I always intended to make.
Paul is 18. He runs Juventud Independentista, the most powerful student union here.
Our country is Corsica. We share a culture, values, a way of life. It's completely different from France.
On the walls, the FLNC is given a place of honor. Just like the elder statesmen, these young separatists hail the end of violence, but say Paris is turning a deaf ear to them.
The state's current attitude is dangerous. A narrow-minded attitude that rejects every single vote of the Corsican Assembly. If tomorrow or in 5 years violence starts again, it'll be a direct consequence of state policy.
We hold no grudge against tourists who come here during the summer. We're angry at the French system, at the French government.
A few days later, the union grabs the headlines by occupying local government offices in Ajaccio and Bastia, Corsica's two main cities. They say they're acting peacefully. High school pupils have joined in too.
Noi volem una risposta chiara giù prefetto, non a tutto ciò che è stato votato nell'Assemblea, l'amnistia, a statuto fiscale, statuto di residente e a ufficialità.
For me, mass struggle, street protests, that's the basis of activism. Even if our leaders are with us, we need to keep expressing our ideas.
These students want high-profile Corsican prisoners held in mainland France to be moved to jails on the island so they can be nearer to their families. Convicts' relatives appreciate the support from younger generations.
I get shivers down my spine when I hear our language isn't dying out. They're the next generation.
In the middle of the night, police forces finally decide to evacuate the offices in Ajaccio. The situation degenerates fast.
The way they threw us out is deplorable. Once again, they've shown us dialogue was compromised. We're the only ones that take a step towards peace.
It's a shame it's come to this. We're considered animals. That's what France looks like nowadays. If they're proud of it, good for them. But we'll do all we can to leave it.
Amnesty for those labelled political prisoners is a major bone of contention with Paris. Nationalist leaders have always shown their support for the families affected.
Thanks to our values, our energy, our will, all our love for our land and our people, I'm telling you, we will obtain this amnesty.
Amnesty will come, because it's a natural course of things.
The most controversial case is that of Yvan Colonna, sentenced to life for the murder of Prefect Claude Erignac in 1998. Gilles Simeoni was his lawyer and is asking for a new trial. But his father Edmond is convinced time is on their side, no matter what the obstacles.
The deterioration of the situation, the refusal to take into account democratic claims, I think this will unite the young generation and everyone else. Of course, we have to avoid the trap of violence, because this would pull Corsica backwards.
Corsica's nationalist leaders only have 2 years to prove their worth. They won the last local elections with just a third of the vote. If they want to strengthen their position, they will need to broaden their appeal beyond their traditional support base.
And that's it for this edition of Reporters. Thanks ever so much for watching, and do stay with us here on France 24.